Hi everyone. So, what I decided to do for my extra credit topic was Thomas Nagel's passage about death. Um, I would like to start with discussing what death is. Everyone considers death a tragedy, a horrible deed occurring for reasons beyond our comprehension. Death is inevitable, and as much as society has come up with different types of ways to ease their fear of dying, it never truly ceases. Religion is a big part of easing the fear of death. Think of Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, etc. Each has their own outlook on what happens to us after we die. People put all their faith in religion, and yet, in reality, no one truly knows for sure what happens to us after death. Death is unknown, a territory that is impossible for us to explore and break down. We can try to imagine what might occur, but we are still left questioning. And knowing what we know about death, we can only assume death is a negative, right? I mean, nothing good comes from it. So it's reasonable to say death must be bad. Well, if we look at the reading by Thomas Nagel on death, this becomes his major question. Can we say death is bad if when we die we no longer exist? Yes, the act of dying could be painful, and the after effects are complicated. But the instant one dies, they cease to exist, and therefore have no sensation of this so called badness. If you don't know you're dead because you don't exist anymore, how can it hurt you and cause pain? You yourself is not feeling the loss and deprivation of death. So is it true to say death is unpleasant? It's hard to say. Let's look at the assumption that death is bad. First off, when anybody is laid to rest, there's always someone mourning their loss. Whether it be a good friend or a family member, these people are burdened with the sadness, a feeling that is most definitely unpleasant. Next, we have the problem of missing out on one's potential future. Think of a young college student just about to graduate with her bachelor's degree and start her new job. Her life was just about to start, but then she dies in a car accident. Her life was taken from her prematurely, and is a true devastation. She will no longer experience anything to come. Graduation, a new job, marriage, kids, etc. In some cases, death may be considered an answer to one's pain, getting rid of it and bringing them peace. Even with something like euthanasia, there could be legal ramifications and moral conflicts, which still result in a person's death in the end. The overall badness of death in all of these examples is the most obvious: the loss of life. Life is sacred and considered precious because we know we won't live forever. If we define death as the loss of life, then death is bad. Philosophically, death is viewed according to belief systems. Let's look back at the different types of moral theories learned throughout the semester to determine the badness of death. According to a utilitarian, only the consequences of death matter in a situation, whether it causes pain or happiness. Death is only a factor to them. Think of the trolley problem. It was the quantity that mattered because the more people that die, the more pain it causes. They're not concerned with the loss of life, so death is only bad when it causes more pain. For a Kantian, for something to be good, it must abide by the universal law. Unlike a utilitarian, a Kantian is not basing death on its consequences or the majority's happiness. Kant believes in order for something to be good, it must act according to the good will, which is acting out on a sense of duty and doing the right thing. When it comes to his ideas on death, Kant believes it is something that is out of one's control. No one can predict when or how they would die. Death may be seen as bad because it acts to end one's life. It is treating people as if it's a means to get its objective, rather than an end, for even the dying have their own objectives. And even though he agrees with the autonomy and the idea we are free as long as we are rational, suicide and euthanasia are also seen as wrong. They contradict the laws of nature and therefore, in Kant's eyes, make death bad. Now, thinking about Rawls' ideas, the way to approach the question, is death bad, is to ask it within the veil of ignorance. The veil of ignorance strips away everything that made us who we are as human beings: our race, religion, traits, personalities, etc. We would become a blank slate with a completely open mindset. And as a blank slate, we are given then the question, is death bad? The answer would be unanimous: yes, it is bad. Dying, whether by accident, murder, suicide, euthanasia, illness, etc., is always looked at with sadness and fear. Though Rawls does believe in the liberal tradition and the right to choose how one governs their own life, such as with suicide and euthanasia, I think in the case of the veil of ignorance, death is something that would always cause one to be unpleasant and only bring about the thought of pain. And in the veil of ignorance, everyone wished to be free of pain and burden. In Rawls' case, then, death is bad. Death is bad because it is the loss of life. But if we look at my earlier discussion, I mentioned that when someone dies, they cease to exist. If you don't exist, is death truly bad? Well, we can't say it is bad because we cease to exist. This is not a strong argument because we cease to exist before we are born, too. And we don't think that before we are born is bad because there was no loss of life. Life has yet to be created yet. Looking at the reasons to my assumption that death is bad, I came to the conclusion that overall it is indeed bad, but it's more on what death causes that makes it bad, rather than the actual instant of it. As Nagel put it, if death is evil, bad, it's not because it itself is bad, but because of what it makes us miss out on. It's the family we leave behind, the moments we will never experience, and one's ultimate end. So this is my end of the lecture. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned a little something from this. Thank you for listening, and see you all soon.